Welcome to Based on True. If you enjoy real-life stories about relationships, choices, and consequences, feel free to subscribe and support the channel with a like. It really helps these stories reach more people. In this story, you will hear about a man whose life was destroyed not by a stranger, but by the people he trusted the most: his wife, his best friend, and even his own children. What began as a simple misunderstanding grew into years of betrayal, manipulation, and silent revenge. And when the truth was finally revealed, it shattered everything that once held his family together. After that, you will also hear a second short personal story about a young man whose first love nearly broke him, and how betrayal can leave scars that stay for years.
It has been a busy 5 days, and our minivan has traveled a lot now. Just 20 minutes after coming back home, I am sitting on the porch in my favorite chair with a glass of dark beer. I am thinking about how our twins are starting to become more independent. My wife Miranda and I are now empty nesters. Like many other parents who recently went through the same thing, but right now, I feel really happy. We started our trip in Atlanta because Luke was going to Georgia Tech. It was easy to drop off our rental car there, so we did not have to keep changing drivers the next day. We flew our daughter Kelly to Gainesville for her new college life as a Florida Gator, while we went to Daytona Beach for some relaxation. Those 3 days were filled with a lot of closeness for Miranda and me. Miranda was very affectionate. We started our family when we were young, just 18, so now at 36 we still have lots of energy and love between us. On our way home, we stopped at an empty truck stop. Mary joked that she had left her underwear there on purpose. Now I sat in my chair, lost in happy thoughts, while Miranda went upstairs for a shower. I was surprised to hear the sound of her hairdryer, which she usually only used before work or going out. When the noise stopped, I heard her walking around in heels in the kitchen. That was unusual, because she usually wore soft slippers or went barefoot. Before I could think much about it, she called me and asked if I could join her. I got up from my chair, empty glass in hand, and happily said I would. When I got to the kitchen, I found Miranda sitting at the table wearing a new blouse and clean jeans. She poured me a mug of freshly brewed coffee and set it down in front of her spot. Miranda appeared focused and a bit tense, leaving me puzzled as to what her serious demeanor signified. Slowly, I took the seat she had clearly reserved for me, waiting for her explanation. "What is up, Mary?" I asked warmly, taking the cup from her and sipping the strong, hot drink. "I am leaving you." "Alan?" She said it calmly and casually, grabbing a thick envelope. "I've got divorce papers here for you to go over and sign." She kept talking, but I was completely shocked and could not find any words. It felt like a sudden, deafening blow out of nowhere. I had never boxed before, but in that moment I felt like a boxer reeling from a missed uppercut and a heavy knockdown. She pushed the envelope toward me, continuing to deliver monotone statements, each one hitting me like a pile driver to the brain. She seemed completely unaware of the shock I was in. All the divorce terms were spelled out in these papers. I am not asking for anything from you. Can do whatever you want with my things. Here, our savings are split. Bills are paid up to today. I have canceled all joint credit cards. I updated my address with everyone who needs to know. You can get more details from your lawyer if you need anything from me. Only contact me through my lawyer. Taking a breath, Miranda carried on in her usual dispassionate, businesslike tone. "I got a paper that says you cannot come near me. Once I go, it is in this envelope." I also changed my phone number and email enclosed all my old accounts. She did not think I would say anything back, and I could not. I just sat there without speaking or moving. Looking at her, the coffee in front of me was barely touched and was getting cold. She told me not to ask our kids or my parents about her. They know what is happening and they will not help me. Miranda stopped fidgeting and looked right at me. She said she had been with Dan for 13 years and wanted to be with him full time now. She said she loved me, but she loved Don more and wanted to be with him. She said goodbye and left. I only managed to ask why when she picked up her bag and opened the door. She looked at me and said 2 words, "Sandy Thompson." Then she left. Slamming the door, I heard her shoes clicking, a car door closing, and the sound of the engine fading as she drove away. That was the last time I saw or talked to Miranda for 16 months. At work, Dan Roberts was like a father to me and my best friend for 18 years. Mary and Dan's wife Lisa had become close during their pregnancies. Lisa was 22 and Mary was a little over 18. Their daughter Cassie was born a day after our twins, which seemed like fate. This initial connection blossomed into a deep friendship, making our families practically inseparable. We spent weekends together, living just 2 blocks apart, until our falling out. The moment that brought the twins into our lives occurred while both Miranda and I were in college. Mary had always aspired to study business or business management, while I pursued mathematics with the help of a partial scholarship, also playing on the college baseball team at that time. I had not yet determined my future path, however. Everything changed when Mary informed me of her pregnancy, which forced me to set aside my aspirations and find employment to support our growing family. Our parents were incredibly supportive, taking charge of arranging and financing our wedding. Within 2 months, I became the sole focus of my parents' attention as their only child. They had welcomed me into the world later in life, approaching their 40s, and considered me a precious blessing after years of longing for a child. Mary had a brother named Tom who was 10 years older. They were not very close because Tom went to college when Mary was only 8 and rarely came back home. Sadly, Tom died in a strange car accident right after finishing college. After that, Miranda's parents focused all their attention on Mary, just as my parents had done with me as a wedding gift. My parents gave us the house we had lived in for a long time because they were getting ready to move south. I got a job selling insurance policies at a local company, which I liked. It did not pay much at first, but if I sold enough, I could make a lot more money. Even though I had to work long hours, sometimes 12 hours a day, and on weekends, before the twins were born. Mary worked part-time as a secretary and studied online to improve her education. During that time, her parents helped take care of the babies and visited, often to spend time with them. Tragedy struck 3 years later with the incident involving Sandy Thompson. My company nominated me for Salesperson of the Year for the North Carolina region. Our small yet growing company, which had recently become a market leader and was later acquired by a national corporation, believed in my potential, along with a $12,500 bonus. I was awarded an all-expenses-paid trip to Washington, D.C. headquarters for a gala ceremony and dinner, where the year's top seller would be announced, followed by 2 additional days of leisure for Mary and me. It marked our first time leaving the city together without the twins, and we were eagerly anticipating the trip. However, 2 days before our departure, everything unraveled. First, Luke was diagnosed with whooping cough, followed by Kelly falling ill the next day. Despite the setback, my presence at the ceremony was mandatory. With a heavy heart, Mary bid me farewell on Friday morning, urging me to try and enjoy the next few days. Arriving an hour before the gala commenced, I told them I was coming alone. I got ready and put on the tuxedo I had rented. Then I went to the big hall and found my seat. I sat next to Sandy Thompson from our office in Little Rock. Most of the people there were older, but Sandy was just a year older than me. She had been working with the company for a year since she turned 21. I did not drink much before this event. Just a few beers, but they had wine at the dinner. I think I only had a couple of glasses. When they announced the awards, I was really surprised to hear my name called as Salesperson of the Year. I went up on stage and got a trophy and a $110,000 check while everyone cheered. When I got back to my seat, my bosses gave me a bottle of champagne after that. Everything is a bit fuzzy until I woke up at 5 in the morning the next day. I found myself in bed next to Sandy, who was barely dressed. I was shocked and scared. With a bad headache and feeling sick from drinking too much, I'd hurried to pack my things and left within 20 minutes. When I got home 4.5 hours later, Mary was surprised and angry. I told her what happened, but she did not want to hear it. She just wanted to know the woman's name. Before I could answer, she said she was going to stay with her parents for a few days. She packed quickly and left without saying anything. Leaving me with the kids for 3 days, she did not answer my calls or talk to me. I went back to work on Tuesday after dropping the kids off at daycare. When I returned home that evening, Mary was already there, pretending as if nothing had happened between us. Any attempt to discuss the situation was met with a stern warning that she would leave with the children if I ever brought it up again. That night, she initiated lovemaking, but it was mechanical and lacked the closeness we once shared. It took many more months for that feeling to return, but eventually it did. At her request, we never mentioned the incident again. The next year, Mary graduated and earned her business degree. Eager to find a job that would use her new knowledge, our bond with Dan and Lisa flourished, leading us to spend every weekend together unless work obligations intervened. Despite this, our wives continued to meet and spend time together, though with some difficulty, as Dan and Lisa moved 15 miles away to be closer to Dan's workplace. Mary's parents moved to the same area too, rent a bigger apartment for their growing family, and to have more room for their grandchildren. They also started taking care of Robert's daughter, Cassie, which gave Dan and Lisa more freedom. Dan's company grew fast and needed someone to manage the office and help Dan. Mary was perfect for the job, and she impressed the bosses during her interviews. She got the job and did really well in it because she had been with the company for a long time and was close to Dan. People jokingly called her Dan's work wife. This went on for 7 years, till something very sad happened. Lisa died suddenly from a brain problem. She was visiting me that day, like she usually did when Dan and Mary had to go away for work. We were all very upset, but Dan felt it the most. He had a hard time dealing with it and taking care of his 11-year-old daughter on his own. So the plan was for Miranda to visit the Roberts' house a few times a week after work to ensure everything was tidy and to prepare dinners that could be easily reheated. That is how Mary explained it to me 16 months later. As I was about to leave the garage with the final box for my minivan, I paused to see Mary's car pulling into the driveway. It was her first return since that memorable conversation in the kitchen where she coldly handed me the divorce papers. Naturally, seeing her today was the last thing I expected. I greeted her as she got out of the car. "Miranda, are you not violating the restraining order by being here?" I asked calmly. "The order ceased to apply on the day we divorced," she dismissed, toying with her keyring. "How are you holding up?" "I am just taking things one day at a time," I said with a shrug. "Want some coffee?" I asked as I walked back to the house. "Sure. That would be nice," she replied, following me inside. The house was almost empty now. With only a few boxes and a table left in the kitchen, we had sold most of the furniture and things to our neighbors and friends over the past few days, and whatever was left was going to be thrown away. A friend's son had offered to help with this, along with his wife and friend. Even though I tried to say no, there was only one greeting card on the fireplace in the living room since I had recently turned 38. My coworkers had gathered to send warm congratulations, along with another card wishing me luck in my new home already packed among my belongings. The company I devoted over 19 years to had always treated me well. So, leaving behind good friends filled me with sadness and regret, yet it was a necessary step. There was nothing tethering me there anymore with coffee brewed and mugs in hand. We settled into the same seats where we had sat face to face 16 months prior. "So what brings you back into my company on this lovely day?" I inquired with detached curiosity. unable to fathom why Mary had returned after abruptly severing ties between us. "Cannot you guess?" she retorted. Visibly displeased, "The kids received letters from you about your move. Why not just call them, instead of sending registered mail?" "Well, actually I did both," I said, explaining that it was the only way to make sure they knew what was going on. Otherwise, they might have thought I disappeared without saying anything. I laughed a bit, then corrected myself. "Actually, I contacted Kelly. I cannot call Luke." "Why not?" Mary asked. Looking confused, "I do not have his number," I said with a sigh. "The truth is, the kids do not want to keep in touch with me," I admitted. Noticing her doubtful expression, "I will just have to show my ex-wife how our kids really feel," I added. Grabbing my phone from the table and dialing Kelly's number on speaker, after 10 long beeps, it went to voicemail. I ended the call and looked at Mary. "Could not you try calling her? Would you mind? Kelly might just be busy," she replied, making excuses, but still retrieving her phone and dialing our daughter's number. Putting it on speaker, interestingly, her call was promptly answered after the second ring. "Hi, Mom. How is it going?" Kelly's cheerful voice greeted. "I am good, honey. What are you up to?" "Well, right now Cassie and I are just hanging out. We have a party later, so we are just lounging around, conserving energy." My daughter responded with a chuckle and a hint of laziness. "Have you heard anything from your father?" Mary asked, glancing at me with a meaningful raised eyebrow. "Yeah. I spoke to him last night. He said he talked to you and promised he would pick up Cassie and me today. Yeah. In about 10 minutes. I think he is going to grab Luke later too, before we all head to the party." Kelly chirped. I felt really bad when my daughter called him Dad, Mary. Always noticing things, saw how much it hurt me when Kelly said that, without thinking. I clenched my fists and leaned back in my chair, looking up at the ceiling with a blank stare. "You mean Dan?" Mary asked, sounding surprised, like she could not believe what she had just heard. "Yeah, Mom. Who else?" Kelly said, still giggling. "And you know what? He really likes it when I call him Dad. And you know he is going to officially be my father in 3 weeks." She reminded her mother, "Believe it or not, my ex-wife was getting married again in 3 weeks. They even sent me an invitation to their celebration." "Yeah, right? Like I would actually attend Kellyanne." "When was the last time you spoke to your biological father?" Mary impatiently inquired, her voice carrying stern undertones. "Mom, I do not recall, maybe a few weeks ago," Kelly responded, her tone shifting from amused to concerned upon sensing something amiss in her mother's voice. I opened my call log and displayed it to Mary, revealing my numerous unsuccessful attempts to reach our daughter. Truth be told, none of my children have called me since Mary left, not a single call in almost a year and a half. That is odd to hear, because I am sitting right next to him now, and I saw firsthand how he tried to call you just a minute before. I did. What is going on?" Kelly, Mary questioned with an even sterner tone. "Oh, it is nothing, Mom. I just forgot," our daughter replied, her voice confused and sheepish through the speaker. "I just want to remind you," her mother said sharply, "you only have one father, and it is not Dan. We will discuss this further later." "Young lady," she promised, concluding the conversation decisively and ending the call. Clearly upset, Miranda turned off the phone and pushed it away. "Why do you not have Luke's number?" she asked again. "For your information, Don made sure Luke got a new phone and memorized his number within hours of his old phone being stolen." I said, "If only I had known." "Listen, do not be too hard on the kids," I said, smiling sadly as I tightly clasped my fingers. Together, it seems like. Their love for me disappeared after just over a year. You heard your daughter. She is happy to have a new father. Now, you know the saying, out of sight, out of mind? Well, it seems like for Kelly, I am already forgotten. Pointing to my long list of calls on my phone, I continued. "As you can see, I no longer have anything to do with the children, and as far as I know, in 3 weeks I will be officially replaced by the real Dad." The truth in my comments seemed to hurt her. But it needed to be said. Since you left, I have probably talked to them for no more than an hour combined. Despite my efforts, God, I really tried, I said bitterly. Remembering a typical moment when I got tickets to the Braves game on opening day of the season, I was so excited. But when I called Luke with the news, he said he was too busy to have fun. I looked up at Mary's frozen figure opposite me. Later, I found out he and Dan went to that very game. Buying tickets at the last minute? Well, if that is what they want, I cannot force them to choose otherwise. We fell silent for a moment, lost in our thoughts, before Mary changed the subject with a quiet cough. So you are moving out of here to be closer to your parents? I asked. Not exactly, she replied. I have to leave so I can look after my mother now. She needs constant care and attention. Oh my God. Did something happen to her? How does your father deal with this? You never mentioned any problems before? I said, concern evident in my voice. Well, at least Mary really cared about my parents. I thought to myself, Mom has advanced Alzheimer's disease. She said it is pretty bad because she hardly remembers anything 90% of the time. And as for Dad, we buried him just over 3 weeks ago. The hospital said it was a heart attack. But personally, I think he died from a broken heart, suffering too much from disappointment and pain. Oh no, my ex-wife sobbed, bursting into tears. How do you know it was a broken heart? And why did you not call us? Of course I called, I objected wearily, and to be honest, that was the last time I talked to Kelly. It was the day after Thanksgiving. That is when I learned Luke had a new number. And my talk with Kelly did not last long. Maybe a minute. She quickly said she was very busy and would call me back soon, but she never did, not that day, or even a week later. I called her every day for a couple of weeks until I figured out why. It is funny that my kids blocked me on Facebook, but not my dad, I said sarcastically. Later I found out. Kelly was busy because she was going to the Black Friday sale with you and Grandma Roberts that day. As for how, I know my father died of a broken heart. It is simple. I never told my parents about our divorce. I was going to tell them sooner or later. But I never did, I said, feeling tears in my eyes. I wiped them away and took a deep breath to continue. When you left, I went to them the next weekend to talk about what happened between us face to face. When I got there, I discovered how bad my mother's condition had become. Dad had told me before how forgetful she was sometimes. But since I last saw them, the Christmas before last, her health had seriously deteriorated. You obviously never knew about this, because not once in the last 3 years were you able to go with me to their place when I took the children there. I could not resist directly hinting at those compelling reasons that, as we both well know now, prevented Mary from accompanying me and the children every time. Because of my mother's illness, I did not have the heart to bring this news to both of them then, and every week it became more and more difficult to do so. After Thanksgiving dinner, once we had settled Mom for the night, Dad began pressing me with questions. It had been over a year since he had heard from you or the kids, so reluctantly, I told him the truth about our split and your departure. Mary, tense as a bowstring, sat across from me, elbows sharp on the table, hands covering her mouth. Tears glistened in her eyes, and her trembling eyelashes were the only sign of life on her pale face. I found Dad in his favorite chair, clutching our family photo. Still damp from his tears, our divorce broke his heart. Mary, Mom, and Dad were married for 52 years. He was old, fashioned, and had hoped we would be together until the end of life parted us. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I recounted that dark day, rising abruptly. I turned to the window, staring at the pale blue sky dotted with rare clouds. Mary's sniffles and quiet sobs echoed behind me, my forehead still throbbing. A minute later, I spoke softly. It was at the funeral that I really felt how lonely. I was only a few neighbors and the chaplain were there to say goodbye to Dad. Nobody else came. I could not even bring Mom, because she would not understand what was happening. It was only a week or two after the funeral, once Mom had started to feel better, that I found the courage to tell her Dad was gone, but it hurts her every time she is reminded of it. So now when she asks, I just say he went out and will be back soon. Mary cried openly. But my tears had dried up a long time ago. I had been really sad in the weeks before. My gaze wandered aimlessly around the room, until it landed on the solitary greeting card on the mantelpiece. Mary, with her tear-streaked eyes, followed my gaze and evidently noted what had caught my attention. I continued speaking in the same detached, distant tone. Even my own mother fails to recognize me, but I owe her a debt for bringing me into this world. So yes, I'm packing up here to be there for her. For however long she has left. Turning to my ex-wife, I straightened up. Crossing my arms over my chest, a bitter, sarcastic grimace colored my final words to the woman. I had loved deeply during our years together. Isn't it incredible? The fallout from your actions and how many lives it affected you shattered our marriage. You severed my bond with my children. And to top it off, you tore apart my family. I concluded my speech. Unable to contain the anger and accusatory tone I had vowed not to reveal, but it poured out nonetheless. Do not you dare blame me for all of this, Miranda shot back, rising from her seat. Unlike you, Dan is committed to me, and let us not forget that you replaced me with Sandy Thompson, she added, her face flushing as she pointed an accusatory finger at me. Her accusation caught me off guard, and instead of a defensive response, I burst into laughter, tears streaming down my cheeks. Sure, I replied, trying to catch my breath. Let us not forget Sandy Thompson. The reason you spent over 15 years planning your revenge. I remembered that evening when you warned me never to mention her name in this house. You threatened to take the kids and leave me forever if I did. My ex-wife raised her chin proudly, crossing her arms in defiance. She stared at me firmly. Well, Mary, now that you have done everything you said you would, I think it is too late for that. But I want to make one thing clear. I never touched Sandy Thompson, I said firmly. I felt a wave of relief as I said the words. Miranda looked at me with wide eyes. Shocked and confused, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. When I woke up in her bed that morning, I was still wearing the same tuxedo from the night before. Nothing happened between us. Do you really expect me to believe this? Mary asked sarcastically. Yes, I do, I replied firmly. I have never lied to you before, and I do not have a reason to start now, especially when everything between us is over. I regained my composure. I do not care. She snapped dismissively, sounding more like Kelly than the woman I once knew. For some reason, her indifferent response bothered me, even though I could tell she did not believe me. It was important to me that she did. I grabbed my phone and called my old office, signaling for Miranda to stay quiet. After a few rings, Jane, the receptionist, answered the phone. Hey Jane, it is Alan Dowd. Oh, hi Alan. Have you finished sorting everything out? My old friend replied cheerfully. Yeah, everything's already packed. Listen, I am trying to get in touch with a colleague at the Little Rock office. Can you check if Sandy Thompson is still there? Sure thing, Alan. Hang on, Jane responded. And after a few moments, she came back. Yep. She is still with us at the same branch in Little Rock. Do you want her number? Or should I patch you through directly? Thanks. Just patch me through. As Mary listened, her brow furrowed, her gaze fixed on me. Hello? Sandy Thompson on the line. Hi, Sandy. It is Alan Dowd from the Greenville office. I am not sure if you remember me. Oh, my goodness. Alan Dowd. How could I forget? I have been dreaming about you for years. The man I always wanted but never got, and now you are calling me out of the blue. So how have you been? She asked. Not waiting for an answer, it is like telepathy, because, believe it or not, I was just thinking about you recently. It has been, 16 years since we last talked at that fancy party where we first met. Remember? We ran into each other at a few other events afterward, but never got a chance to really catch up. You know how busy those crowded parties, important meetings, and all the other stuff can be. Of course, I remember our first meeting in Washington. I said, actually, it has been 17 years. I corrected with a chuckle. Though besides the award ceremony itself, that night is a bit of a blur for me, Alan. You were a riot that evening, Sandy reminisced, her voice filled with laughter. What do you remember? She asked, still chuckling. Well, after my clumsy thank you speech, I remember leaving the stage, and then I think we were still sipping champagne at the table. But after that, it is all a bit fuzzy. It was probably the first and last time I got that drunk, I admitted. Feeling a bit embarrassed, Sandy's hearty laughter echoed through the phone. You were quite the character by the end of the night. Though honestly, compared to some others, you did not drink that much. She teased, well, if you want honesty, Alan, I will give it to you straight, she continued, her voice sly. Go on, Miss Thompson, lay it on me, I replied. Ready for her frankness, it is quite amusing. I chimed in with my former colleague. I have to confess, I had my eye on you that evening, even though I knew I had some serious competition from all the single ladies gathered there. Absolutely, Sandy chuckled. You were like a tall, dark, handsome magnet, drawing all the attention. It was like watching bees buzzing around a pot of honey. Sandy's infectious laughter made me join in, though I could not help but sneak a glance at Mary, who listened to Sandy's reminiscences with pursed lips. Her face turned sour when Sandy mentioned pulling me onto the dance floor, then by accident. I swear I put my hand on you and felt how solid you were, Sandy said, still laughing. Things were getting pretty intense. Huh. Yeah, I nearly fell over from that. I chuckled. Although being called Mary all night was a bit weird, it did show how loyal I was to my wife. Around 11, you were mumbling Mary dear again, and then just passed out in your chair. When the party ended after midnight, everyone went to bed. You were still in the hallway, so I got the night porter to help me get you to your room. Sandy said. I do not remember all of that, I said, listening closely to Sandy's story about that important night, which was the start of the end for Miranda and me. The tricky part was no one knew which room you were supposed to be in, and the hotel computers were offline for an update or something. I did not delve too deeply into it. Long story short, the only logical solution at the time was to bring you to my room. And let me tell you, it was no easy feat moving a guy your size, especially when you were barely conscious, Sandy explained. There was a pause on the line, some rustling on the other end. Then Sandy spoke again. All these memories have made me a bit feverish and parched, she confessed with a laugh. So where did I leave off? Right there. Well, I have to confess. At that moment, I was feeling a bit mischievous, she admitted, her voice tinged with embarrassment. I mentioned earlier how I accidentally felt your manhood when the receptionist and I were maneuvering you onto the bed. It was just a fleeting touch, but I immediately realized that you were not only tall, but also quite well endowed. If you get what I mean, she chuckled nervously on the phone. Unfortunately, you nearly passed out as we were getting you into the room, and then you just fell onto the bed, mumbling something we could not understand. You know, even though I was tempted, I could not do anything with someone who was practically asleep. It just felt wrong and against what I believe in, but I was a bit drunk myself that night and feeling turned on. So I decided to undress and lay down next to you, hoping that when you woke up and saw me, it might spark something between us, but my plan did not work. Because when I woke up in the morning, you were already gone. And when I asked around, no one had seen you for the rest of the weekend. So all I can say, Alan, is that your wife must be a very lucky woman, she said, covering her mouth with both hands as she realized what she had just admitted. At that moment, I did not feel sorry for my ex-wife, because her own impulsive decisions and pride were what caused our marriage to fail. And all the planning and scheming she did just to get back at me only made me believe it more. I realized I never really knew who she was. Oh, about that, I replied. Now she is my ex-wife, and if I knew then what I know now, I probably would have taken you up on your offer. I chuckled, answering Sandy. She laughed. Well, honey, you were about 7 years too late if you were hoping to start something with me again. I am happily married now with 2 great kids. I still use the last name Thompson at work because all my clients know it. Actually, officially, I am Sandy Roberts. I met Robert 8 years ago, and he was the first person after you who who managed to find a way to my heart," she said with a touch of sentiment. A crease formed on Mary's tense forehead as she gripped the edges of the table. Her face contorting into a pained grimace, she stared fixedly at the phone on the table as if it were a coiled viper ready to strike. Observing Miranda's reaction, I was perplexed as I could not quite grasp its significance. "By the way, it is because of Rob that I thought about you. Buddy is not that strange," she laughed. "Well, the thing is, his older brother Dan is getting married in a couple of weeks. And his fiancée, named Andy like you, has the last name Dodd. So I wondered if she was your relative, because you are the only person named Dodd among the people I know." Now I understand why Mary reacted like that. I said, "But I cannot say that is true. I do not have any relatives named Andy. Although now that I think about it, the only person I knew with that name was still in high school. It has been so long that I almost forgot about it," I said with a grin, looking at Miranda. She blushed and looked away. Feeling embarrassed, I guess I do not really know the realtor anymore, but no one would mistake Andy for a guy now. She is beautiful. And she has amazing kids, Kelly and Luke, who are in college now. Kelly and Dan's daughter, Cassie, are best friends and share a room in Florida. They were both bridesmaids in my wedding. And Luke was Rob's. He did a great job preparing the ceremony and entertaining the guests, I reminisced. Yes, a great guy. Let me tell you, Sandy's last words made me ponder as I mechanically listened to her. Her tone grew more serious, and she began speaking more quietly. "Actually, Alan, to be honest, I do not think they should get married, because even if they go through with it, their marriage is doomed from the start." I was surprised. "Why do you think so? What could stop them since they have been together for so long, Mary?" Being directly involved was even more astonished than I was. Her eyebrows shot up, mouth agape as she leaned forward tensely. "Lord Alan, because they are both serial cheaters. I mean, Dan also cheated on his first wife Lisa with Andy. I do not know how or why he did it, much less why he did it to Lisa. I assure you, Lisa was also stunning. Although I never actually met her, I saw her photographs anyway. Andy and I had a frank conversation. About this one day, she told me that her husband and children understand that she has a husband at work and a husband at home," she explained. How she divided her time between the two of them. While her husband at home had a similar arrangement with a woman he worked with. Can you imagine that kind of relationship? "Yeah," I muttered, trying to get Miranda to look at me, but she kept avoiding my gaze. Her cheeks, neck, and even part of her chest were red from embarrassment. I told Rob that I would confront him if he ever thought about something like that. Sandy said firmly. Then she casually mentioned something surprising, unintentionally aiming it at my ex. "Well, Dan still has someone on his side even though he is with Andy. That seems to be his way of doing things. I think he always has a backup plan," she said with a snort. "His current girlfriend's name is Tilly, and he sees her every time he goes to Chicago. According to what Rob told me, apparently he plans these business trips just to see her every few weeks." Observing Mary's reaction, I noticed her complexion shift from bright red to pale, then even to a hint of green. Leaning on the table, she silently struggled for air, seeming on the brink of vomiting right then. And there, Sandy continued to enthusiastically relay the latest updates from my former inner circle. Damn. I doubt they would have tied the knot if his bosses had not insisted he married Andy after. Her ex sued the company following their divorce. Can you believe it, Alan? Her husband at home had a completely different take on their relationship and would not tolerate the chaos. Some men still have integrity. Huh. Rob confided that the company had to cough up a hefty sum to settle the matter. 100 grand. Just great, I thought to myself. And on top of that, they gave Dan an ultimatum. He has to clean up the mess, or they will kick him out. What do you think? Not exactly the ideal foundation for starting a life together. Is it continue cheating on your bride while staring down the barrel of a loaded weapon? Mary sprang up, knocking over a chair as she stumbled into the bathroom, where seconds later, I heard her retching. I could not blame her. After today's revelations, Her carefully constructed world had been shattered and literally flushed down the drain. The Dan she believed to be honest, loving and faithful turned out to be a fraud. But thankfully, that was no longer my concern. I talked with Sandy. For a bit longer, she shared stories about her kids and asked about my plans. I told her that I was applying for a job at an insurance branch near my mom's house. It was not the usual sales job. It involved looking into suspicious insurance cases, which sounded interesting to me. The pay would not be as high as my old job, but it would still be enough for me. Plus, I would have my own office and assistant, which was a good step forward in my career. Miranda came back looking tired, and I finished talking to Sandy. We exchanged contact info and said we would keep in touch sometimes. After saying goodbye to Sandy and hanging up, I turned to Mary. She looked really upset, with her face wet and pale and her makeup messed up. All of this happened in just 15 minutes. Miranda looked like she had aged a lot in just a short time. "You look really tired," I said, feeling sorry for her as she sat down and put her head in her arms. She seemed genuinely upset this time. "I am, Alan, really tired," she said quietly, sounding exhausted. "I do not have much time. I need to follow up on a lead while it is still fresh." I said, "I should be in Brunswick by morning," I added. Looking at my watch quickly, the drive usually took about 6 hours without stopping. But I knew I would need to make a couple of stops along the way. "All these boxes are yours. They contain all the clothes, photographs, and other stuff that you left." I gestured toward the packages piled up in the corridor near the entrance. "I plan to send them to you next week. But since you are here, I can help by loading them into your car if you would like," I offered in a composed tone, guided by the enduring politeness instilled in me by my upbringing. "Actually, can I ask you a big favor?" she murmured softly, lacking the courage to meet my gaze. "Can I stay here for the night?" "I do not think I could go back home right now." I pondered for a moment, idly playing with a set of keys on my finger before selecting a couple and placing them on the table in front of her. "Why not? Here are your keys and you can stay. But when you leave, you will need to drop them off at the real estate office, just so you know. New tenants are coming on Monday, so you have 9 days here if you need them, this Sunday. Some people will help me get rid of the stuff we do not need and clean the apartment. Utilities will work until Monday." Finally, I looked around the room again and scolded myself mentally. I went to the mantelpiece and picked up a card from my old coworkers. Their kindness still makes me feel good in my new home now. I just need to say goodbye to my ex. I really need to go. "Goodbye. I hope we never see each other again," as I left. I looked back at the woman I used to love. All I could see was someone crying, looking broken at the table.
Second story. Story of cheating ex a few years ago.
Hey there. I just want to share my story. Let us call my ex Jay, not her real name, because she is pretty well known in my country right now. So it all began when I was 16 and she was 15. Everything was going great at first. She was not famous back then. And honestly, she was an amazing girl. But after 3 months, things started to change. One day we were in bed together and she received a Snapchat. It's from a guy with a little heart emoji. I was like, "What is that about?" She explained that the guy, let us call him Frank, lived nearby and she just wanted to be friends with him. I was fine with it. I am not the controlling type, but I did tell her I did not like the hearts they sent each other. She said it did not mean anything and promised to stop, but after a few weeks, I noticed it was still going on. I told her again that I did not like her texting him and asked her to stop. She said she would, and she deleted him. All good, right? Nope. She added him back. I got mad. Feeling disrespected, she deleted him again. But it did not end there. I will not go into all the details. But for the past few months, she secretly texted him using a second account and secret apps while lying to me. I found out a few times, but always believed her excuses. During this time, She became controlling. I could not hang out with my friends. I had to be with her at school. I had to constantly text or call her. It was not healthy. And to be honest, I started acting a bit toxic too. During this time, she also met up with him and some of his friends, which I did not like. This is when I found out that Frank also had a girlfriend, and this girlfriend was in the same situation as me. He also secretly texted with Jade, my girlfriend. I remember we four met up. Once it was an idea of Frank's girlfriend. She wanted to have closure about what was going on. Jade and Frank acted like they had not seen or texted each other, and I was so stupid to believe that during this time. I also caught Jade texting hearts and asking for meets with other guys. I will not go into detail about that. Long story short, she eventually broke up with me. It broke me. We met up one last time to talk and exchange stuff. And of course, Frank was there with his friends. I remember I asked Jade if we could speak in private and begged her behind a building. Frank and his friends were on the other side of the road. I told her, either you speak with me privately or you go with him. That is when she turned away and walked to Frank. Looking back at it now, it was like a movie. However, this really destroyed me. It was the first time I cried like a little child in my mother's arms. This was really hard for me. I got trust issues and toxic behavior from this. Also, my self-image was destroyed during the breakup. I sent her a voicemail of me crying and begging, which she played out loud in her class while laughing also. I lost a lot of my friends because she would not let me go out with them. And a lot of people got to know me as the cringe boyfriend who was always with her. This is long and I am sorry. I just wanted to get this out after a long time.
Thank you for watching. What do you think about everything that happened in these stories? Do you believe betrayal can ever be justified? Was Mary punished enough by the truth she tried to avoid? And do you think trust can ever be rebuilt after a betrayal like this? I would really like to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoy true relationship stories based on real life, feel free to subscribe and stay with us. More stories are coming soon.